Hey, this is Tony Ross for tonyteach.com, and thanks for tuning in to our replay of our Google Hangout, Make It Rain in Toon Boom Harmony 12. This demo shows all the steps we use to animate rain in Toon Boom Harmony without using particles. We did use Photoshop though. If you'd like a more detailed HD version of this tutorial, plus all the support files, it is available. Just click on the info link in the video for more information. Thanks again and enjoy the tutorial. Now, I'll be going through this step by step, but we'll also be releasing today. We'll be releasing the more detailed version of this. We can even get the support files with that, but more on that later. So, I want to show you pretty much what the final version of our project is. Let's see. I'm just going to scrub through the playhead real quick. Turn off some sound. And for the most part, what we're going to be using Harmony for is doing the heavy lifting of creating the cycles. We're going to take the rain images from Photoshop, but create the cycles in Harmony, and we're going to set the buildings up in Z space. I'm not also using Harmony and really taking advantage of the camera that's in here. If there is one huge advantage with respect to almost any Toon Boom product compared to Flash, it has a camera. And the stuff you can do with it, it's very basic, it's very simple. There's no more trying to fake as if you've had a camera or having to export from Flash, going over to After Effects and setting up things there and hoping that your SWF or all your files got over there fine. You can do all this in one program. So that being said, I'm going to go ahead and start. Let's see if I can do a new document here. Let's go ahead and close this out. Let's see. And by the way, in case you didn't know this, you'll get to see a little behind the scenes here. If you're wondering, well, I don't know if I want to play around with Harmony or not, or I'm not sure, what they have done is they have set up, they used to have a personal learning edition, and what they've started doing now is there is a 21-day demo, so it's completely open, which is what I'm playing with now. I'm actually using Harmony Essentials. Continue the trial, and it's fully functional. So that is one cool part. Let me pull up my backdrop real quick. And back to Harmony. Okay. So this is the first screen you're going to see. And what we're going to do, call this rain, and I'm just going to call it and label it for the Hangout. And I'm saving this to my hard drive. For the camera size, I'm actually going to do 720p. So that's 1280 by 720. And I'll leave my frame rate at 24. And I'll go ahead and click Create Scene. Do not click Open because you're basically looking for something, anything you've created in the past. And of course, here are the other things that I created earlier. So just Create Scene. And again, I'm running Google Hangout and this at the same time, so hopefully they'll play well together. I hear someone's microphone. Hold that thought. let's see, where are we? Hey, Chris.
Hello.
Hey. So Chris is going to be playing my wingman per se, and keeping an eye on things for me. All right. So welcome to Harmony. So this is what the interface looks like. Um, this main area here is referred to as the camera area. Um, One of the cool things about this program is I can zoom in and out of this main area just using my scroll wheel. And let me think. Let me see if I can turn on my. There we are. I can also just use the number 1 and 2 keys. This isn't like Adobe products where you do Command plus. My quick keys are set up for Harmony right now. So the default is just simply holding down the 1 key, it'll zoom all the way out. Holding down the 2 key will zoom all the way in. And what I want to do now, if you notice, there's this thin little red line that's around everything. And that's if I move to, let's say, the timeline, which is right down here, there's a red rectangle. I'm grabbing that area. If I move back to the camera, it's selecting here. And you would just turn that preference on. Let's make sure I have my time here. Let's see. Okay. So the first thing I want to do is make sure, let's go to Preferences. I'm making sure I'm using my Toon Boom Harmony shortcuts. You can also use Adobe Flash or Toon Boom Studio shortcuts, but I'm going to leave it on the default. I'm going to go to my General tab. The main thing you want to make sure you have set up is Focus on Mouse Enter. And by default, this isn't selected, but again, this is wherever I'm moving my mouse, that's what's making each one of these little rectangles pop up. All right, and one other thing we're going to need later is our advanced animation tools. I'm using the default setting as far as the workspace right now, but I want to go ahead and add in, go to Workspace, Toolbars, and add advanced animation, which these are going to come in handy in a moment. So I'm going to go ahead and save. And again, I'm going to be saving often, mainly because, again, both Google Hangout and Harmony can ask for a lot of power. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do is I want to import some images. Now, I could actually have created all the images I'm going to be using today. I could have created them in Harmony, but again, this is mainly about moving around the Harmony interface, playing with the camera, creating cycles. So I'm going to jump over to Photoshop for a moment and show you exactly how this document is set up. I have a document set up at about, I think we did this at not 720p, but we did this at 1080p. I tend to make things a little bit larger if I know I'm going to be bringing them in, especially vectorizing them. But what I want to show you is each one of these folders here has a single layer or a single image layer here. And the reason you do this is when you import into Toon Boom Harmony, you want to make sure each one of these is in a Photoshop folder or group. Each one of these will in turn into a layer for Harmony. So let's see. I have the sky and clouds, the background layer, middle ground, and the foreground. And again, special shout out to one of my guests on the panel today, Mr. Lamont Russ, for doing these drawings for me. I really appreciate that. Now again, there's not multiple layers inside each one of these folders. It's just a single layer. So I have that set up. And oh, major important thing, I normally work just keeping everything at 72 DPI when you're creating your images. So we have that set up there. I'm going to close this out for now. Don't save. And this little guy will come. We'll talk about a little bit later. Let's jump back over to Harmony. And I'm going to go up here to this little icon and select Import Images. So I'm going to browse. And what I want to bring in is the document we just looked at, which is the rain demo. And we have several options here. We want to definitely create layers. And I want to create layers based on the file names. And the next section, in my opinion, this is another one of those things where Harmony, I'm going to try not to bash Flash too much today, but as far as vectorizing something that's being brought in, it does an incredible job. So I want to convert this from a bitmap or a raster image and make this a vector. So I want it to be color. So I'm going to simply click OK. And I'm going to get this little pop-up window that says, hey, we've noticed that there's multiple layers here. So I definitely want this to be separated layers. And the transparency, I'm going to leave it at the default of straight. And what that is going to do, it's like it's going to show up as if it were just in Photoshop. So I'll click OK. And all right, now it has brought everything in to the screen, and you're hearing the little alarm on my phone, possibly. It's telling me to drink water. Anyway, so we now have each of the layers in Toon Boom. So I can turn these on and off. And actually, I've got an extra drawing layer here. I'm going to go ahead and delete that one. All right, so we now have these set up, and what I want to do next is I want to start moving these along the z-axis. And in order to do that, I'm going to take a look at my top view. Okay. Now I've done demos before, and a lot of people go, well, that took way longer. You could have done that just by running over in After Effects, whatever. Understand, the reason this is not going as fast as it normally would is because I'm going to explain to you each thing that I'm doing. That being said, I'm going to select just the sky layer, and by selecting this layer, if you look over here, it's even selecting the little icon for the sky. And I can also just select from over here in the top view and select any one of these images. Now, what is the top? The top is like we're looking directly down on top of this as if this image was tilted up on its side, like looking down on a diorama. And by default, each one of these is at the same exact z-axis. So what I want to do, just to show you how this works, I'm going to select the very first one, and I'm going to bring this forward on my z-plane here. And if you notice, we're bringing it forward. It's not getting any more pixelated or anything like that, but it is just getting bigger. I can also move this from side to side. Okay, let me undo that. Okay, so now it's back to where it originally should be. So that's great and all, but what we want to do is set up everything so the camera can move around, and we want all of the stuff. We want to move it on the z-axis, but we don't want it to scale. So I'm going to go, instead of using this the translate tool here, I'm going to go over to maintain size. Now, this is awesome. For those of you who are like me, I generally will build my animations. I have other people who who will design the characters or even design the backgrounds. So I normally will contact someone and they may not know how to use Harmony at all. So I'll say to them, hey, draw out this for me. Like I reached out to them about, I said, okay, this is how I need you to set up this document in Photoshop. Draw it out to scale. So if you notice the windows that are way back here, they're much smaller than the ones up front. So you draw everything out the way it should be. And then once we get into Toon Boom, we can come in here and start separating things on the z-axis. So I'm going to use the maintain size. I'm going to select the very first one here, and I'm going to move this forward just a little bit. Now, if you note, there's now no change that we see in our view. I'll take the middle one, and just to show you what's happening, I'm going to purposely move this backwards, and the middle one's going to disappear. And the reason it disappeared is because I moved it behind the background of the sky. Okay? So I'm going to leave the middle ground right there for now. I'll select the background. I'm going to push that back a little bit. And last but not least, if you notice even the stacking order changes here, I'm going to shift the sky pretty far back. Okay, now there's not a lot that you can see happening just yet, and the way that I can show you what's really going on is I'm going to add in a camera. And to do that, I'm going to come down here to my layers. I'm going to simply click the plus button and add a camera. Okay, and what I can do at this point, let's grab my translate tool, is I can start moving around, and already you can see how the multiplane is going to work. Okay? All right. So I'm going to undo that for now, get the camera back to where it was. One other little shortcut I do want to show. Actually, let me do something crazy here. I'm going to move the camera way out of proportion. If you're still working on something, but you want to see exactly what's happening, you can actually turn off the visibility of the camera just in your layers here, and everything snaps back as if the camera didn't exist. Okay? All right, so let's undo that. Put the camera back where it was. In fact, we can actually delete the camera for now. So I'm going to delete that layer. All right, so now we have that set up. One major thing I need to do is I'm going to clear off this little guy here, the Animate button. When you're working in, let's say, Flash or even Toon Boom Studio, you're animating automatically. And so what's happened here is you'll see these little squares here, which basically mean I've set up a keyframe, which I shouldn't have done. So allow me to undo something real quick. I'm going to delete these keyframes. Now, of course, everything snapped back to normal. So let me make sure Animate is off. And let me reset all these little guys. Go to my maintain size. There's a sky moved. There's a background. Fun part about this is you're now getting to see about how fast I would normally do this. Okay, so I've got all those set back up. And let's save. Now, the next thing I want to do is build out the rain. Now, I do have my keyboard shortcuts turned on, and if you keep noticing, I keep turning on and off F16. Let me be clear, has absolutely nothing to do with Harmony. I have my menu very clear here, and I can turn it on and off to double check and see what time it is while I'm working. So I know a lot of people will see that in the tutorial and go, hey, what did F16 do? It's just me checking my time. Okay. So I want to jump over to Photoshop. And I want to show you basically what I'm going to make. These are the rain elements. And again, I've just made two different layers. There's the back rain layer. And this is a layer I've actually set the opacity to 61%. Then there's the front rain layer. I'm going to turn off the back rain for a minute, which is 100%, and it's only about half the size. Now, let me be clear. Can you just draw this out in Harmony? Yes, knock yourself out. As for me, I took a shortcut of creating this in Photoshop, mainly because, one, I know how to. Two, I feel it gives me a little more random of a pattern than I would normally just do on my own. So I'm going to go ahead and create this document. Let's do Command N. Let's see. All right, it's going to make one at 1080p. I'm going to go through this pretty quick because I don't want to focus too much on Photoshop. And what I'm going to do now is, press the letter D to get my default colors. And I'm going to fill this entire area with black. So let's do Option Delete. That's Alt Backspace on PC. And the reason I could do that is I had my default color set up. Let's do Filter. I'm going to add noise. This is Gaussian and monochromatic. I'm setting it to about 29%. And again, I'm going to be zooming through this section pretty quick. The next thing I'll do is go to Image, Adjustments, Threshold. Now, I'm going to zoom in here. Let's do Command 1. Okay. I'm zooming in at 100% so I can see what's happening. Now, the closer I move this over to the right, the more this is going to start thinning out. Now, each one of these dots that you can see, hopefully you can see, each one of these dots is going to get changed into a drop of rain or a little line of rain. Okay, so for me, I've got my threshold at about 225. All right, so click OK. And what I'll do next is jump over to my channels. I've got RGB. I'll hold down my Command key, Control on PC, and click once. And what's happened is I've selected only the white pixels that are there. So each one of those drops. And I'm going to put these on their own layer. So I'm going to do that via copy. Let's do Command J. And I'm going to go back to my original layer here. Matter of fact, I'll just call this black. And again, I'll fill this in with black. Let's do Option Delete. So now, if I turn off the top layer, there's no little dots there. Turn that on. There are my dots. Okay. Now, to turn these dots into rain, let's go to Filter, Blur, Motion Blur. And whoops, make sure I'm on the right layer. Make sure I'm on layer 2, with which is our little dots there. Let's go to Filter, Blur, Motion Blur. And it's kind of hard to see. I'm going to zoom in here. But each one of these is now this little line. So I've got it about 17 pixels. The degree is at 90. Looks good. But it's a little faint. So I'm going to do a couple little tricks here. I'm going to duplicate our rain layer a couple of times. Let's do Command J. I think, all right, I did 7. That works. Okay, that's a lot of layers. So we're going to drop these down real quick. Let's do Command E to keep merging down until I get one layer of rain. There we go. Okay, so there is first part of the rain. And what I want to do now is I'm going to duplicate this layer. Let's do Command J. Okay, and I'm going to duplicate this once more. Command J. Now I'm not going to merge these, but what I am going to do is I'm going to extend my canvas. So let's go to Image, Canvas Size. All right, the height, I want it to be 200%. Set my anchor at the bottom so everything will remain down here, but it'll just expand toward the top. So click OK. I'm going to zoom out for a moment. Select my black layer so I can see what's going on. Let's do Option Delete. Okay. Now, for the second layer, the very top layer here, I'll grab my Move tool and move all those little rain lines up top. So it's kind of duplicated there. And I'm going to merge this down, Command E. All right, turn it off for a minute. So I have now one long rain. So we're going to even call that long rain. Actually, let me be clear. This is technically what's going to be in the back. And this is the one we're going to drop to about 60% opacity. Let's go to the front rain. Okay, and one of the things I'm going to do here, let's do Command T for transform. I'm going to flip this around. Hold on my Option key, Alt on PC. Okay. And the reason I did that is to give a little more layered look. So, all right. So we have our layer set up. And I'll get rid of the back or the black layer. Just delete that. And I'll do Command G, make a group for the back rain. Make one for the front rain. And just like I'm on a cooking show, I already have one of these prepped, so I'm going to use that one. I'm going to use this one over here, which I think I did a better job on. So if I go, let's close you out. Don't save you. Let's jump back over to Harmony. And what I want to do now is I'm going to import an image. Let's browse. And I want to find the rain layers. Open it up. Okay. Create layers, yes. Create layers based on file names, yes. Vectorize image, yes. Here's the tricky part. Color, yes. We do not want to select black and white. But Tony, why? Here's why. One of the awesome, cool things and almost unmentioned about Toon Boom. If you're drawing something, normally you're drawing whether it's black ink on white paper or even a pencil test on white paper, it's looking for basically to knock out the white because it knows you want to color everything usually inside of Toon Boom. So by all means, if you're doing a pencil test or if you've got black ink characters and you're bringing them in, you want to use black and white. Because the rain we're bringing in is actually white, if we selected black and white, it would pretty much make that transparent. So we don't want that. So we're going to leave this at color. All right, so I'm going to click OK. And separated layers, yes. Straight, no. I'm going to actually do pre-multiplied with white. Basically, I'm making this any of the edges that are really close from transparent to non-transparent, I want them more white than they are black. So I'll click OK. And we should now get, yes, we have new images. If we look over here on the top, it's kind of faint, but you can see these little dots there. And what I want to do now is check my time. Yay, we're doing awesome. Okay, so we have this set up, and what I want to do next, I'm going to create some symbols. Now, if you're familiar with working with Flash, almost anything you do has to be a symbol. 9 times out of 10, you don't have to use symbols when you're working with Harmony, but, and here's the thing, I tend to like working with them because it gives me my own separate timeline to work with. But for the most part, your drawings that are in Harmony, if you're familiar with working in Flash, imagine the graphic symbol on steroids. Drawings in Flash are drawings in Harmony are incredibly powerful. That being said, we are going to make a symbol for our rain pieces. Quick way of doing that, I have my front rain selected, and what I want to do is come up here to this little Lego brick looking thing and say that I want it to create a symbol. All right, so I'm going to go to my library so I can see when this happens. All right, so we'll click Create Symbol. It's going to give me the name of the layer, which I am cool with. So we'll click OK. And there's our symbol in the library. I'll click the next layer, which is the back rain, and create a symbol there. Okay. Now, I'm going to solo these layers for a minute just to show you something. If you look, this isn't actually filling the whole area. And pretty much by default, what Harmony is doing, it's pretty much using this, the height of the windows, saying, okay, everything that's coming in, it's going to be that height. Not really worried about stretching it though, because it has been vectorized. All right, that being said, all right, let's go back to working on these. We're going to first work on the front. Let's do save. All right, I'm going to work on the front one. So I'm going to right click, come down to edit symbol. Okay. And now what I want to do here, I'm going to go to my select tool. And it's giving me a lasso. I want to make sure this is at a marquee. Let's go to Tool Properties, select Marquee. Okay, so there are all those beautiful little raindrops. I'm going to hold on my Shift key and scale this guy up a little bit and move this over. By the way, the fun part about this is, in order to really grab this, I'm having to grab right on the raindrops. So a quick shortcut, of course, is using my arrow keys on the keyboard to move those up. If I hold down my Shift key, it'll do that at 10 pixels at a time. It allows me to adjust a lot easier. All right, let's save. My fans are kicking on. Let's quit out of something there. Okay, now we are going to take this frame and we're going to duplicate it 3 other times. And the reason is we're going to make it look, we're going to take the single image and make it different 4 variations of it, pretty much. So I'm going to click down here and drag this little red stop out to frame 4. Okay. Now select frame 4 here, and I'm going to extend the exposure. If you're familiar with Flash, you'll like this little quick key, F5, to extend that out. And this is where we get a little bit different. For what I'm about to do, if you're doing this in Flash, you would have to do keyframes on each one of these frames to make a change. Here, we're going to do something called a drawing substitution. And this gets back to what I was talking about of how much power is in the drawings just in Harmony. even though we're inside of a symbol right now, what I'm going to be using is the power of the drawings, not necessarily the power of the symbol. So you have frame 1, frame 2. I'm going to right click, and technically I could do this with a shortcut key. I want to duplicate this drawing. Now, by doing that, I'm going to zoom in here on this timeline so you can see this. There's that little thin line right here, and that basically means that this is drawing 1, this is drawing 2, and this is this is how you can do different drawing substitutions. So what I want to do for drawing 2 is grab my select tool, grab all of these guys, and I'm going to flip this image. Now, I could technically just kind of grab this modifier on the side and drag it over, but to make sure it happens all at the same time, I'm going to hold on my Option key, Alt on PC, and flip. Okay, so from frame 1 to frame 2, that's good. Let's select frame 3. We're going to do the same thing. Duplicate the drawing, and we flipped it from sideways. Now, this order is actually important, believe it or not. Hold on my Shift key, and I'm going to flip it upside. Whoops. Let's try that one more time. Not Shift, Option. That's better. I'm going to flip this upside down. Okay. One last thing. We didn't get a, let me undo that real quick. We didn't get a drawing substitution. Let's see. Duplicate drawing. Okay. All right, let's try that one more time. Hold on my Option key, flip. Okay, now let's try this. Frame 1, frame 2, frame 3. Okay, that's better. All right, save. And last but not least, we will duplicate this last drawing. Make sure that line got there. Yes. Select all of you guys, and we'll flip you back the other way. Now, until I learned how to learn what that order was, I used to have like a little red dot there so I'd know what I was doing. But basically, we took the first image, went to the second frame, flipped it this way, then, and that was, what is that? Horizontal? Sure. The second one, we flipped it down vertical, and then the fourth one, we flipped it horizontal again. So if I played this, let's save, turn our loop on. If I click play right now, that's the first part of the rain. Now, that is the way that I used to do rain initially I was using Toon Boom Animate, and also with other programs I used to just do that one layer. But shout out to, good grief, Toon Boom veteran and pretty much old school Flash veteran Adam Phillips. I was looking at one of his tutorials one day, and that's when I saw this other technique. So I like to mix these two. So this is the one layer. So go to our library. Let's save this thing. Let's go to our back layer. Go to Edit Symbol. I'm going to zoom out here for a minute. And again, all of this, I'm making sure my Animate button is off. I'm going to use my transform because that makes it a little bit easier to scale stuff up for me. This one I'm actually going to make a little bit larger than the main screen. Let's hold down my Shift key, use my arrow keys to get that all the way up. Okay. Now, for this little guy, he's all the way out to frame 60. I want to bring him down. I only use 10 frames for this symbol. All right, so I'll extend this exposure. Let's do F5. And now, I actually do want my Animate button on. frame 1, I'm going to insert a keyframe. Simply press F6. Frame 10, I'm going to hold on my Shift key and bring this rain all the way down. Good. All right, so now if I play this one, looks pretty decent. And actually, show you something that's really cool. Lamont, I always used to see him make these big, large rectangles of black around an image so you can see what the final animation would be. In Toon Boom, you just come over here and you go camera mask. And now I can see what the final piece would look like. So if I click to play this, all right, so we have that one animation that's going straight down. Then we have the other one that's just throwing random rain out there. Let's go back to our top. Let's save. Okay. Now, we're going to do a couple of things here. Before we get too complicated, let's look at the top view. And I want to bring our rain to the front. Well, let me turn off my animate button because I'm not wanting this to animate. I want it to actually be here for all the frames. This is still our drawings. These are not the symbols yet, but I am dictating where I want these to be in the layers, the layer position. So we've got the front rain, so I'm going to grab my maintain size, and to make sure these are going to be in front of the buildings at all times, I'll click and drag this all the way to the very tippy point of the camera. So it's way down here at right at the point, right at the beginning of the camera. So it's always going to be in front. And I'll do the same thing with the back rain. Drag that all the way to the front. Okay, now that that is done, you're either going to watch me do something really awesome or fall on my face. Okay, so front rain, I'm going to select this drawing. I'm going to delete it. Again, this is not the symbol, but on our main timeline, this is what we made the symbol from. So I'll press delete, and I'm going to go to my library, find the front rain. I'm going to hold down my control key. Whoops. Stop that, Tony. I'm going to drag this over. Now I'll hold down my control key and place it directly where I deleted that drawing from. Let go of the mouse, let go of the keyboard, and I have what's called paste special. If any of this seems confusing, the only thing you need to make sure you do is check the box that says paste all frames of the symbol. So I'll click OK. Okay, now if you note, our new size that we built in the symbol, we actually made that a lot larger, so you can see that now. And I'm going to zoom in here a little bit. You can see that the icons for the symbols looks like a little film strip there. All right, so I'm going to do the same thing. Let's save this. Where's our time? We're doing good. I'm going to select the back rain. I'm going to delete the drawing I made. Go up here. Drag this down. Hold down my control key. Let go of the mouse. Let go of the keyboard. And again, this is paste special. Paste all frames of the symbol. Okay. Looks good. That's great. All right. Now, have to do a little bit of a setup here. One, I initially tried to do this at about 240 frames, which would make it about 10 seconds. The movement I thought looked a little bit slow, so I'm actually going to do half of that. That makes sense for Mr. Computer here. So I'm going to drag my stop frame all the way up to frame 120. Okay. And the first are the 4 top layers here. I'm going to select these on frame 120, hold on my shift key. So get all these guys, and I'm going to extend the exposure. Simply press F5. All right. Let's go back to the beginning. And now for the awesome cool part. We have 120 frames. 4 into 12 is what? 30. Sounds good. Okay. 4 into 120. Anyway. So what I'm going to do now is create a cycle. So we have this little animation. But what I want to do is I'm going to hold on my shift key and grab all 4 of these frames. And I'll right click. And I'm going to select, dude, where did you go? Create cycle. Now, there's only 4 of these drawings here. And I'm going to have 30 cycles. So we'll get to frame 120. All right, and so now, as I scrub, you see that. And by the way, I'm going to zoom in here just a little so you can see this better. You can see how complex the rain looks here versus just by itself. And the same thing I'm going to do down here on the bottom one. We've got 10 frames, so this is going to be a cycle of 12. If I were getting more advanced, I could technically have these layers fade in and out as far as transparency, so like the rainstorm is coming up and stuff like that. Okay, so that's done. So now if I play this, let's see. Okay, so there's our rain. All right, not bad. But the next thing I need to do, let's go back to our top view. We need to start working with our camera. Now, actually before I do that, let's do something real quick. I'm going to add a peg to my rain. Now, what a peg is, traditional animation, you would attach things to pegs, especially if you're trying to do any type of movement. So kind of look at it as being able to control whether it was a character, like if you've got all these different layers for a character, or in this case, I want to control all of the rain with a single element that I can tilt or rotate or do what I have to do. So I'm going to select the front rain here, and I'm going to go right up here to this corner and simply select Add Peg. So now this peg is going to control the rain, and at least the front rain, but I need to bring the other one here, so I'm going to click and drag this right under here until I see that little line. And this basically means I have the peg controlling both of the layers. Now, I'm going to zoom out for a moment. I'm going to select the Rotate tool. Let's see. Let me turn off my camera mask for a moment. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to rotate this just a little bit here. Zoom out. Let's see. Wrong quick key. I'm going to make this maybe a little bit larger. Place this where I'd like it to be. And this is, again, if you notice, I'm not being able to select this because it keeps finding all the little empty spots. Got one. Okay, cool. You know what? I'm just going to use my cursor, my arrow keys. Okay. Because I want the base to be here as well as the top. So you can actually see what's happening. using that full rain there. All right. So we've got our rain tilted. All right, and play. So to me, that looks a little better than the rain just coming straight down. But the cool part is, if all of a sudden you cut to another scene, you could actually rotate it the other way and just have it coming straight down. All right, so that part is done. What time is it? 3:55, looking good. All right, now we have to add our camera. So let's go to our layers, add a camera. And again, I'm going to turn off my camera mask for a moment. And in order to control the camera, we're going to need a camera peg. So I'll add a peg to our camera. Now, I'm going to purposely break this animation. Well, not break it, but it won't look as cool for a moment here. We are going to animate our camera peg. So I'll select the camera peg, turn on our animate button.
Hey, Tony, is the peg the only way to control the camera?
Yes, good question. You can have a camera, but in order for you to be able to animate the camera, you have to add it to a peg. It's basically you're moving it around.
Someone asked.
Okay, cool. Thank you, Chris. So I'm going to add in a keyframe, F6. I'm going to go all the way to the end to frame 120. That's some pretty rain. Okay, now the animate button is on. So I'm going to go to my translate. Because the animate button is on, I don't even have to add in a keyframe, though I should just to be safe. Let's do F6 anyway. And what I want to do is I'm going to push forward. Now, this is where I'm going to break the animation or break the scene here. All right, you're watching? So if I push forward, dude, we just lost the rain. Okay, so I'm going to undo this real quick. And this is, again, I think when I was first learning this about maybe, oh, good grief, it was years ago. Shout out to Adam Phillips for showing me this trick. So we have the rain, and we made sure the rain is in front of everything. So it's right down here at the very, very tip. But once we start moving our camera, we lose the rain. Actually, we start moving it, and that's, in fact, it gets large, and then it just disappears. So how do we fix that? I'm going to grab the rain peg and bring it under the camera peg. So now the camera peg is controlling two things, the camera as well as the rain. Now that we've done that, if I grab the camera peg and I push forward, the rain is still there. Now, if you're going to do something like faking, what is that, like the old school video recorders, camcorders, and they have the little record button flashing in the corner, and the little title safe line. If you're doing that type of thing, you would do that same trick. You would attach that animation or that drawing, you would attach that to the same peg as the camera. Okay, so now that that's done, I'm going to go to frame 120, and I'm going to push forward with the camera. Before I even do that, let me pull back and tell you where I'm going to go. There's this window right here. So it's the blue building, third window. That's where I'm going. So I'm going to go push all the way in. Let me zoom out here. And the cool part is I'm jumping between top and also the camera view here. So lifting up. And yes, I realize I'm also breaking this again, but we'll fix it in a second. So I'm going to pull this over and down. Come over here and we'll push forward right to that window. I guess that's close enough. Boom. Okay. So I'm going to scrub through this real quick. It's actually not too terribly bad. There's one thing I want to change though. Now, Lamont or Chris, you may agree or disagree. As a matter of fact, everyone watching this may agree or disagree with what I'm about to do. Turn off my animate button for a moment. Sky and clouds, I'm actually going to also parent that to my camera peg. So I will still have the sky there. And I think that really helps push the illusion. Okay, let's see. Let's turn on our camera mask. All right, I'm going to bring you down just a little bit. Zoom in. Okay, we might be about to lose something here. Hopefully we saved. Okay. That is Tony pushing Harmony a little bit far without actually saving on something. One quick second. Da, 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 da. It's that fun game of save often. Okay, how far did I get? Okay. No wonder why. Okay. I hadn't saved lately. All right, so I'm going to catch myself back up here. Let's do F6. Turn on Mr. Animate. F6. Zoom out. Push all the way in. Over. Up. Over. So yeah, what I noticed, I was talking to Chris about this earlier. I was like, now either it's my computer, which don't get me wrong, I do not have a super powerful computer. I actually have a Mac Mini, and it's probably the bottom of the line Mac Mini, and I don't have a lot of RAM. So I have to save often with what I'm working on. So got that going. Okay, I also said let's drag down our sky, save. So maybe we won't zoom in that close. Turn off the animate, save again. And now if I play this, all right, let's turn on our mask. All right, so there is the final. Now, well, actually, it's not the final. There's two little pieces I want to add. One, the movement is a little bit boring, and that's because the way it's going, there's no ease in or ease out. Right here on the timeline, I can come over here and adjust my easing. So I'm going to click down here and bring this right down to the end. So it's going to be pretty fast initially and then ease out as we're getting to where we want it to be. Let's save that. And we'll click play. All right. Looks good. And there are, let's see, a lot of different ease options that are there. But I'm not going to play with those right now. But by default, it's actually just on straight. So it basically means the camera is going to be the same speed the entire time. And this way, it's a little more dramatic. So it's actually speeding up in the very beginning there versus where it's ending. Last but not least, the one thing if you're working on rain, the one thing that really pushes the illusion has absolutely nothing to do with the image, but you need sound. So to do that, let's go ahead and do File. Well, let's save this again. Command S. File. Words. Import sound. And I'm going to go to, there we are, 10-second sound. Open. Okay. Now, let's see. You have your sound layer, and if you see this little 100% thing here, has absolutely nothing to do with volume. It simply says, how large do you want to see the waveform? Okay. So now if I play this, we have absolutely no sound. For you to have sound, you want to turn this on. Of course, comes in handy if you're trying to do things like, I don't know, not crash your computer. So I'm going to turn my sound on, hit play. All right, so that's there. One last thing. When you're working, not that we're going to do it today, but if I wanted to add in some thunder or maybe someone was going to be talking, especially when you're working on lip sync, you should normally be able to scrub and hear what's happening. And if you notice, we cannot hear any sound. In order to do that, click the little speaker with S for scrubbing. And then you can hear the sound. And that is, it's not the only way, but that is a way to make it rain in Harmony 12. And again, the heavy lifting, pretty much the compositing and setting up the Z-axis is what I was using Harmony for. All the images and even the rain can be drawn inside of Harmony, but I actually did those in Photoshop. And again, shout out to Lamont Russ for the incredibly gorgeous buildings. So it's pretty playful.
Hey, Tony.
Yes.
Hey, does the camera have like any kind of attributes on it to where you could play with blurriness and stuff? Just something extra. I was just wondering.
There is a blur filter.
Okay.
That I'm aware of. Now, I have not done this, or I've not done this yet, but if I'm right, and I could be wrong on this, if anyone knows Toon Boom better than me, hey, stop me. If I'm correct on this, there's a certain filter that you can set connected to the camera, so as you're trucking in, it'll automatically do those little blurs and things that way.
Okay.
I know that I've manually played around with things, both in Toon Boom Studio as well as in Animate. I believe in Harmony, especially on the premium one, you have a lot more access to your camera controls. Yeah, I think I answered that. There's, matter of fact, I'll show you this. There's in the effects, I know you've got blur, you got brightness and contrast and things like that. you have a lot more effects if you're working with, again, the higher versions of Harmony. But to the best of my knowledge, the way I would do it, or the way I would force it, would be to definitely add that in with my camera, um, and just have it connecting with it trucking in.
Okay, perfect. Thanks.
Okay. Did you, Chris? Did I lose you, or did I
Nope.
see anyone?
Fantastic. Looks good. Sounds great. Lamont did a fantastic job too.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, we'll have to do that. We'll have to team up again. I'm wanting to do something where we almost do a tennis match where Chris will jump to your screen. You can draw something and kick it to me. I'll rig it. Lamont, maybe you can handle backgrounds, or I don't know, something.
I believe Lamont can do it all.
Oh, no, that's way too much. No, I need you, Chris.
I'll help.
Chris, are there any other questions that I've missed, or?
No, the only thing I ever had trouble with is, when you moved your sky to your camera peg, I would have issues with the top view, but you had your sky maintain itself in the background. But sometimes when I hit those buttons, I hit the wrong thing. So that was the only thing that popped up for me.
Okay. Coolness. I'm trying to think. Is there anything else in the Q&A panel?
I didn't see any.
Okay. Trying
If
to
I missed it, I'm sorry.
Oh, no problem. Matter of fact, I could probably, in theory, check this without. La 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 la. Where's my window? Okay. I think we're good. Where is? Give me one quick second, so we can make sure there's no. Check this without. La 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 la. Where's my window? All right.
Well, Tony, I definitely saw like some huge differences and some time-saving things in the difference between how I use Flash and what's set up for Toon Boom. It's especially with things like where it's got the camera mask. How you said how I make the stuff that you're doing here, I do it manually in Flash.
Right.
Which artistically it's fine for me artistically because I like putting in that work like that. But but on the business side, they want everything yesterday. So This is definitely a lot helpful, especially with having it planned out before you get started and everything. Because you told me a little bit about how what you wanted to do. And then I set up this, I made the scene. It just took me like a couple hours to do these buildings and stuff, and hand it over to you and see how easy it is to just put it together.
Yeah, I think the one thing that, if I can say one thing about Toon Boom versus, matter of fact, and this is almost any Toon Boom product, even Studio. I don't like working with Toon Boom Studio, but that's another story. But even with Toon Boom Studio, Animate, and definitely with Harmony, you don't have to trick the program to get done what you need to get done. So you're allowed to be free and animate. I think what's happened, if you look at a lot of quote-unquote Flash animations, they become very stagnant and still because of that. When you look at something like Bob's Burgers, if you watch Bob's Burgers, you'll notice their camera moves that aren't normally in other shows, And matter of fact, what's the other show we started watching? Star versus the Forces of Evil.
God,
You'll see these
yes.
beautiful camera moves, and why are they there? Because it's easy to do it. A lot of web shows, you'll see that you can almost tell people are using Flash because they're stuck there. The other danger of that is if you've been animating in Flash for years, like me, probably for the first 1 or 2 years using Toon Boom, I was still using it as if it was Flash. So I was like, I must stay in the rectangle. Do not go out of the rectangle. And it's like, and Toon Boom's like, dude, this is a camera. Take me where you want to go.
Nice. Nice. Great little demo there, buddy.
Why, thank you. Well, I hope everyone's enjoyed this. I'm going to do probably a little bit of editing to this, but if you are looking for more in-depth instruction on this, I have actually recorded everything that I've done for this in a separate tutorial, and you actually get the download files. And I'll be posting that link probably as soon as this render is done. But this will be live on This will be live on YouTube, not live. The replay of this will be on YouTube. And again, if you want to get the download files of it, that will be available as well for a small fee, because Tony needs to pay rent, but that's another story. So I hope you've enjoyed this. Any questions? Anyone?
Fantastic.
Yep, good job, thanks.
You're welcome. All right. So this has been Tony Ross for tonyteach.com. Remember, keep it simple. Make it perfect. If you don't have time to make it perfect, rethink the idea. Have a good one.